pub in Gravesend causing a bit of an uproar amongst residents because there are plans to turn it into a mosque. And this is also coming at the same time.
Again, I'd like to sort of understand, why is there such an outrage when it comes to it being a mosque?
Look, I'm always going to champion pubs. I grew up in pubs. My family has run pubs for decades. And
you can have any opinion you want about a building's use, but we'll arrest you if we think you're inciting criminal activity. That's what Leicester police effectively told a local woman who dared to comment online about the Glen pub's conversion to a mosque. A conversion that proceeded despite nearly 900 formal objections. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer announces tough new immigration policies after years of record-breaking migration numbers. The timing is suspicious, isn't it? Is this a genuine policy shift or just damage control? Let's connect these dots and see what they tell us about the state of free speech and democracy in Britain today. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. What happens when 2,500 petition signatures and 900 formal objections get thrown in the council's bin?
you get the argument as well from them being mosques. Look, I respect everyone's religion and everyone's right.
And, these conversions are typically subject to standard planning procedures.
That's the question residents of Leicester are asking after the Glen pub, a beloved community landmark with decades of history, was approved for conversion into a mosque despite overwhelming local resistance. The timeline of this controversy reads like a case study in democratic failure. The Glen pub, which served generations of Leicester families, closed its doors in 2022. Shortly afterward, plans emerged to convert it into an Islamic community centre.
Look, I'm always going to champion pubs. I grew up in pubs. My family has run pubs for decades. And
Fahima, pubs are so culturally important to Brits. Surely you can see why people would be upset to see it turned into a mosque when they would prefer to have it as a pub.
Local residents immediately mobilised, citing legitimate concerns about parking, noise, and the loss of a historic community gathering place. They collected thousands of signatures and filed hundreds of formal objections through proper channels. Yet the council approved the conversion anyway, creating what one resident called a powder keg of frustration. People who had followed every democratic procedure to voice their concerns watched as those concerns were summarily dismissed. The message was clear. Your opinion doesn't matter.
Problem with turning a pub that isn't being used, that hasn't been sold to another landlord, into a mosque.
Including public consultations, even with some sort of demonstration against it from the community.
This frustration boiled over on social media, where one woman expressed her anger in posts that Leicester police deemed potentially inciting criminal activity. The exact content of those posts hasn't been fully disclosed, raising questions about the threshold for criminal speech. Was she genuinely advocating violence, or simply venting the same frustration felt by thousands of her neighbours? Leicester police didn't just arrest her, they launched reassurance patrols in the area. But reassuring whom? Those who supported the conversion? The message seemed clear. Oppose this project at your peril. The chilling effect has been immediate. I'm afraid to say anything now, one resident told me, requesting anonymity. If she can be arrested for Facebook posts, what happens if I speak up at a council meeting? Another added, it feels like certain topics are off limits for criticism now. This case stands in stark contrast to numerous instances where online complaints about church conversions or housing developments face no police action whatsoever. The double standard is glaring. At what point does expressing opposition to a building's change of use become criminal? The line seems dangerously blurry and perhaps conveniently malleable depending on the nature of the project being opposed.
Pub in Gravesend causing a bit of an uproar amongst residents because there are plans to turn it into a mosque. And this is also coming at the same time.
Again, I'd like to sort of understand, why is there such an outrage when it comes to it being a mosque?
This woman's arrest represents a troubling precedent where legitimate community concerns face criminalisation, while democratic processes fail the very people they're designed to represent. It reflects a broader pattern across Britain, where public opinion increasingly disconnects from government action. Nowhere is this gap more evident than in the nation's approach to immigration policy, where we see the same pattern of officials ignoring public sentiment until political pressure forces their hand. After years of record-breaking migration numbers, Keir Starmer has suddenly found religion on border control. His new tough stance on immigration comes after net migration nearly tripled from 321,000 in 2016 to a staggering 996,000 in 2023, with current figures still hovering at 728,000. This convenient conversion raises an obvious question. Is this a genuine policy shift or merely political damage control? Labour's historical position on immigration tells a revealing story. Under Starmer's leadership, the party consistently criticised Conservative deportation policies. Just 2 years ago, he publicly opposed deporting foreign criminals, calling such measures unconscionable. Fast forward to today, and his new white paper proposes significant restrictions on settlement and citizenship that would have been unthinkable coming from his mouth mere months ago. The specifics of Starmer's proposal deserve scrutiny. He now wants to extend residency requirements from 5 to 10 years, implement tougher rules on work visas, and introduce new integration demands including stricter English language proficiency standards. These measures directly contradict his previous positions, making his transformation appear suspiciously opportunistic. Conservative MP Chris Philp didn't mince words about this apparent conversion, pointing out that Labour refuses to set a migration target because they know they'll fail. This criticism hits the mark. Starmer's announcement contains vague promises but lacks measurable commitments against which voters could hold him accountable. The timing of this policy shift correlates suspiciously with recent local election results. Reform UK's Richard Tice made this connection explicit, noting that voter concerns about immigration drove significant losses for both major parties. Starmer's sudden tough talk looks increasingly like a desperate attempt to stem the bleeding, rather than a principled position. Evidence suggests Starmer spent years appeasing the liberal wing of his party while migration numbers soared. His speeches from 2019 through 2022 consistently emphasised compassionate approaches and criticised deportation efforts. Only when polling numbers turned alarming did his tune change. Will voters trust this sudden policy shift? Labour's track record and the lack of concrete targets in the announcement give ample reason for scepticism. The pattern mirrors what we saw in Leicester, authorities ignoring public sentiment until pressure becomes unbearable, then offering half measures that come too late. Both situations expose a troubling disconnect between government actions and public concerns. Whether in Leicester or Westminster, officials seem to listen only when ignoring citizens becomes politically costly. This raises fundamental questions about the state of democracy and free speech in modern Britain. The Leicester arrest and Starmer's immigration U-turn share a disturbing pattern: authorities that ignore public opinion until the political cost becomes too high. In both cases, we see a system that claims to represent people while actively dismissing their concerns. This raises serious questions about what British democracy has become. Free speech and representation now appear conditional on alignment with establishment views. Express the wrong opinion about a building conversion, face arrest. Raise concerns about immigration numbers, be ignored until election results force acknowledgement. Will voters continue accepting this disconnect between their concerns and government action? Or are these incidents early warning signs of a significant political reckoning to come?